everybody, and welcome to Time Lapse for Video, the winter edition. So really excited to be able to bring this to you. Just had a little bit of a setup here, so just wanted to make sure everything's working. And yeah, so thanks for joining us. And my name is Tom Strat. I'm the lead digital artist of the Creator Space, and you are here. And we're going to learn a bit about time lapse modes using the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. And more on winter modes as well. So let's. I just want to start off by thanking all our partners in this project. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts, and then the library partners. So we have the Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. So now, in terms of the partners, the Blue Mountains Public Library and Wasaga Beach Public Library, they also have the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K that you see behind me here available. So that's through our partnership. The Creator Space has acquired these cameras, and the libraries offer them through the technology loans. So what you need to do is get a proficiency test. You just go to our website, tbmcs.ca, and fill out the proficiency test, and then we can set you up with that. So you also need to have a valid library card at either the Blue Mountains Public Library or the Wasaga Beach Public Library, and then you can access this equipment that I'm talking about today. So a lot of this will have to do more with the Blackmagic camera, but some of the essence of time lapse and winter and snow will also come to play as we go through this. So it's a kind of a more specific workshop, but it's the general ideas can still be applied to other modes, other cameras. So even from personal devices, other types of video cameras. So the same guidelines apply. But we're going to look at kind of some of the magic that Blackmagic can do, and that's really the fun part of what's available, what's possible. So let's look at. I wanted to share a short piece that I have from some time lapse that I did in the winter, and I'm just going to pull it up here. Just going to switch over here, but we have I have this some time lapse scenes. And I'm just going to play these, and you should be able to see this. So here we go. Oops. So this is some time lapse for a film about Blue Mountain Resort, and these are sunrises. So these are all winter time lapses. You can see the sunrise coming out, clouds moving, sunrise over the hill, and this is all that kind of winter time lapse. Sun's peeking out through the trees, but what really makes this magical is seeing the snow, seeing the sun reflecting off the snow. It's a really magical time of the year. I know it sounds like some sort of a song, but it really is. So here's again this whole kind of sunrise montage in the beginning, and playing with, now it's coming up over the hill, and some regular motion, some time lapse, that combination. And that's the really cool thing, is that time lapse can really be intercut with the regular footage you're doing and with other footage. So this is like some aerial footage, and that's the really cool thing, is that it lets you do both aspects of production, where you can tell the story of the sunrise, but you can then use time lapse to maximize what's possible and how that would work. So I think that's the really cool thing, is that it has this ability to be used as intercut with your regular footage. And I think sometimes we think of time lapse as like, okay, we're just going to use time lapse and that's it. You have to do everything in time lapse. But you can totally intercut it with other footage, and that's the really fun part. Now, you might be asking, what is time lapse? So time lapse is essentially taking one frame. So remember, video works at 24 frames, 30 frames, 60 frames, whatever frame rate we decide. And you're taking one frame and shooting it every so often. So it could be one frame every 10 seconds, one frame every minute. And what happens is, so if you imagine you're doing one frame every minute, it would take 24 minutes to get 1 second. So you're compressing or time-lapsing the actual temporal time. So an hour could be 3 seconds if it's one frame per minute, and you're seeing an hour in 3 seconds. So you're speeding things up. So time lapse, specifically, is there's a time lapse mode, whether it's a camera, a phone, and it's doing one frame every so often, and it's a timed interval. That is time lapse. The other thing we can do in post-production is we can also take a regular speed. So if you filmed for 3 hours, and then you can speed it up 1,000%, 2,000%, things like that. That's another way to do time lapse essentially, but it's not the true time lapse that we're going to look at and talk about today. So some of the considerations, I put a bit of a chart, and we'll see kind of what this means, but some of the considerations are, time lapse works best for video, works best when there's moving elements. So we're talking about clouds, sunrise, sunset, cars, people, water, things like that. Something that's moving over time. So the waves are moving. There's a, what's it called? There's the sunrise, the sun comes out, the sunset, the sun goes down, and the cars are zipping by, people, clouds come around. So this is the thing. If you're doing time lapse and you have a blue sky with no clouds during the middle of the day, you won't really know that it's time lapse. If you have some nice puffy clouds that are traveling through, you'll see them zipping around like we just did in that opening that I showed you. And that's really key for the time lapse, is that to have your clouds and elements zipping around, and that makes time lapse work, and it makes it the most effective in that way. So that's really important. Now the other thing to keep in mind, a big consideration, is that exposure can be complex because it could be changing. So your sunrise, sunset, the sun's getting brighter, sunset getting darker. So you want to think about what the exposure is when you're finished. So in a sunrise, you got to think about, it's going to be really bright. So normally if you're, let's say, at a f-stop of 22 or like totally closed down and a low ISO, then you want to start that way, because the point is you're starting from the night. It should be dark, and then it's going bright. And the reverse applies for the sunset. It's a little bit easier because you're starting with your maximum exposure, and then you're letting it basically get darker as the sun goes down. But you still want to make sure you see enough, and that comes back to that kind of added the latitude, the idea of how much exposure latitude you have. So the good thing is the Blackmagic camera has about 13 stops, which is pretty wide, so it can deal with the really dark, the really bright, and then the Blackmagic RAW format also allows you to do further information and changes in post-production, changing the exposure and things like that. So there's a lot of fun things that you can do with that. Then the last thing here, it's really important, is that once you go into time-lapse mode on the camera, you ensure that you're in time-lapse mode, and you set that up, but you also want to make sure that you turn it off. So then you go to shoot regular video mode. Once, it happened to me a couple times, but now it really makes it very clear. But early Blackmagic cameras, I'd be doing some time lapse, then I went to do some regular footage, and then I realized I was still doing time lapse, and then I didn't really have the regular footage. So I thought I was shooting a few minutes of some footage. It turns out I had a few frames, and that's something. So it can happen, but you want to really make sure you do time lapse, then you turn it off, because it is a mode of the camera operating that way, and you want to make sure that it can work appropriately, and that could be a good thing, right? To make sure that it's it's not staying in that time lapse mode, and that could get really complicated. Okay, so I have the camera here. So here's the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. I got a nice close up of the screen, and I'm gonna just take us through the menu items on how to deal with time lapse. And it's not too complex. It's really, so we have our menu button is right here. Let me just see. I'm gonna adjust the focus a bit to go there, and there we go, just so we can have enough of everything in focus. Okay, so here's our menu button. So I'm gonna hit the menu button, and then under record is where you have all this magic, where you decide, what kind of formats you want to use. So I'm using Blackmagic RAW Ultra HD in this case, and then I'm gonna swipe over. There's like the film, the frame rates, all that kind of stuff. And then on the third panel, we see up here, it says time lapse. And right there, it says time lapse. And you basically turn it on or off. So blue is on and the other one is off. And now over here, you decide capture one frame I have it every second. So this is a sliding panel. So it could be every 2 frames. So it's a pretty, almost like regular speed. And then you can go down to minutes and so on, up to 10 minutes. 2 frames to 10 minutes. So you just decide. I like to work as 1 frame every second is what I demoed today. Or if, I think that's always great, because you can always speed it up a little bit more. That's kind of a good way to start. Try it out like that. You can go to 1 minute, and you can go like that. But that's what we need to do. And then back here, this is important. It's going to tell us that we're in time-lapse mode, because now what happens is this button has a little like clock on it. So you know you're doing time lapse. And then what happens is as you record, it's just recording, it's a lot slower. So you're gonna be like, you know, one frame. Usually you see this number going fast through 24 frames per second, but in this case you're seeing like one frame, then another frame, and another frame, and so on. So that's the real difference in time lapse recording is doing it that way. So I'm just gonna look. I have a card here somewhere. So I just want to show you guys what that looks like. So I was offloading what I shot some stuff this morning. I was lucky enough to get cleaning some snow, and I was able to get some sunrise winter footage. So that was really exciting. So I'm going to put a card in here so we can just see what that looks like. Here's a card, right? So, and you can see it gives me 790 minutes. And that means I'm in a time-lapse mode whenever it gives me a huge running time. Because it's no longer like this card would generally be maybe 60 minutes, right? And now watch what happens when I hit record. So record, 1 frame, 2, 3, every second is 1 frame. Okay, and then alternatively, when I turn this off and I go back to 24 frames a second, now I only have 41 minutes. And watch the counter. Now it's going 24, 24, 1, 2, 3, right? And those frames are going really fast. That's how you know you're not in time-lapse mode. So just a note of caution to go in and out of time-lapse mode, you know, effectively, and making sure that that will work for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just open up Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve, the software, and think about, you know, I have 3 shots. We're going to bring them in, and we're going to just look at how we can post-process them and how that will work. So I'm just launching DaVinci Resolve Studio. This is version 17. And again, you can access all of these through the library partners. And we have the ability to, you know, work on these editing projects directly on iMacs. So the iMacs are loaded at each library. So again, Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, Saugeen Beach Public Library. We have 27-inch iMacs ready for video editing and loaded to work with you know, 4K footage. It can deal with all of this kind of the ability to edit in 4K. So let's take us over into. So I'm in Resolve here. I have some of the some demo stuff that we were working on before, some color grading concepts. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put in, so I just create a new bin, and I'm going to say, hey, let's create time-lapse footage December 8th, 2021. So we know exactly when it happened. Right click, I'm going to import this media, and I have it, I think over here, masterclass, time-lapse video, and here they are. So I'm going to just go to this, command, select all 3, open, and here we go. And here is my time-lapse. So this is shot in Blackmagic Raw, right? So that's that one. Then I got this one with a little bit of the mountain coming up. You can see this is similar to what I showed in the demo. And then here again, you can see the things moving around. It looks like my camera moved a little bit, maybe in the wind. So that's the other thing. With time-lapse, you gotta also make sure that, you know, you put a sandbag down, you put some weights down, the tripod's really secure because wind can affect it. So these are just in the flat film mode. So I'm gonna right click. I'm gonna go to the LUT, lookup table, LUT, and I'm gonna go to Blackmagic Design, Generation 5 to extended video, and now you can see what that looks like there. So, and I'm going to create a new sequence, time-lapse demo. Okay, and I'm just going to put them in one after the other. One, and you'll notice right away, it doesn't have any sound. So time-lapse doesn't shoot with sound. Okay, so here we go. So now you can see the footage. I'm just going to go to full screen here. So here it is playing, nice and slow, and you can see it's getting brighter. So I've exposed for it to be, you know, for the when the sun's going to be coming out. So we see slowly the sun's coming out. So this is one frame every 10 seconds. And you see like some birds flying, but you see how important it is that the clouds are moving. If that was a blue sky, we wouldn't even notice it's a time lapse, but we do have the sunrise. So that's helping us as well. So again, so the exposure, I always keep it a bit darker, and we can always play with that a bit more. Then here we go, the sun slowly coming out, and we're starting to see the snow on the trees. And then here's our next shot. So we see a bit of the snow blowing off the side of the mountain, and the sun's kind of coming in and out. So here's a good example. I didn't get a lot of clouds coming here. So you're not really getting much of a time-lapse effect here. So this is really good that it didn't work out with the clouds. If there were clouds here, it would have been a lot more noticeable, a lot more interesting as a time-lapse shot. So something to think about. So here you can see again, the clouds are moving a bit. It's not too bad. And I'm trying to get the sun coming out. And it was a bit of a mixed morning, so it wasn't as perfect to get that sunrise, that kind of big, blast of sunshine, sunrise. But that's the idea there. Getting that nice bright sunrise. You can see definitely it's getting brighter and so on. So that helps us with the time lapse, and then just kind of keeps going until then. But again, not the best in that. And this is, I think, an important takeaway is that it's a mixed bag of what you're going to get. Some will work, some won't work. So be prepared to shoot time lapse multiple times. So again, with the winter, the snow adds that extra element that it's more reflective. So we need to always underexpose. I've underexposed probably about 3 stops here to really get the snow to not be that reflective and to stay within a nice kind of range. Okay, so now what I can do is I'll say, okay, well, this takes a bit of while to get through. So what I'm going to do is in my timeline, I'm going to right click here and I'm going to say change clip speed. So I'm going to say, let's make it 500%. It's going to shrink it. That's going to go 5 times faster. So you get a faster time lapse. But by shooting the extra frames, I have the option to make it slower or faster. But that gives me a lot better kind of approach, to the sequence that lets me see things a lot faster. So again, right click, change clip speed, and I'll go maybe 400% on this one. Right, and it's not too bad. And then this one we'll do the same thing. We're going to do change clip speed, and maybe we'll see 600%. And again, now you can really see it come to life. Okay, so now what do we do with this? Like, it's a bit darker. So here it comes down to, the magic of Blackmagic RAW. And we're going to have a workshop coming up in January on this as well. So I hope that you guys can join me for that. That will be posted shortly as we add our January online workshops. So I go to image, and I can say decode based on the clip. So now what I can do is I can say, okay, white balance is shot. I can say, okay, I want to go to a higher ISO. Look at that. I can make it brighter. So 200 ISO instead. I can make it have more contrast or less contrast, right? So I can really play with that. And that's already looking really nice. So let's just go to full screen here. So look at how important that is. So I shot it at 100 ISO. And then with Blackmagic RAW in DaVinci Resolve, I can go to image, I can change it to 200 ISO. So I'm just making it brighter. Now you can do this in boosting things too, in exposure and other software. But look at that, the exposure's allowing for the sun to not get too overexposed. So to me, this looks pretty cool. So we've sped it up 5 times to 500%. And we have that nice glow of the sun coming, and we have clouds, and we get into this. So this is really key here, is that the snow on the trees isn't blown out. And it's really easy to blow it out. Let's look at what that would look like if I, if I overexpose it severely, like this. So this might have looked good in the beginning, but look what happens by the end. And I think this is a really important takeaway is, by the end of this shot, this is nice and bright, but by the end of it, it's unbearable in terms of it's just blown out, the snow. So, here, it might look okay right here for this moment, right? But it really becomes not so great later. So I'm just going to go down here. So that was like a 3 stops. So somewhere here, let's say even here is nice, right? What happens when we get to the end of with the sun? Again, it gets way too bright. So you can see that difference of this exposure looks great right now, but I need to make sure I'm planning for what's going to happen after. Now, the reason this gets even more, uh, abundantly bright and complex to deal with is all of the snow is very reflective and it will glow. With bright sunshine, this will all glow. So exposure is really hard with snow. You want to always make sure that your snow is not glowing and burnt out, because you can't fix that in post-production very easily at all. It's going to still have that bit of that glow. So you want to always make sure the white on the snow is not having this big glow or overexposure. So really consider that. And that's a really important difference in winter cinematography, winter time-lapse work, winter in general. It's something to really think about. So again, and then, we can even make it darker. So, if I go back to 0, that's kind of the 0 mark there. But what happens if we make it darker? Even darker is nice. Like, you really get that idea of the sun coming out. And that's cool. So that gives us that morning. So just think about what time of day, we're working on and so on. So this next shot, again, I'm going to go to image under clip, and I'm going to say, okay, yeah, let's make this an ISO 400. See how bright that is now? And that's interesting too. And that's just kind of in the middle of the day. And now you really see that snow falling off the hill, or the snow making, like, see that wind on the hill there, that you get that bit of that time lapse. So again, this isn't bad. And notice again, none of this garage roof is blown out. So our exposure is, again, underexposing and then bringing it up a little bit in post is really, really important for winter cinematography and for our winter time lapse. Go to this clip. This one's pretty dark. So again, what if we make it 400? That's kind of neat. Right, we start to see more of the snow. So you can see this has just been the process of, I always go, underexposing definitely, because I can bring it up in this post-production after. And that's, I think, really key for all video production, especially with time lapse. If you start a bit darker, you can bring stuff up a bit, but it's really hard to go the other way around. But it's nice looking, the snow, again, it's not glowing. Nothing went too crazy. And let's just see again, what happens if we played with this shot a bit more. This is what happens if something's too overexposed. It's basically a glow, and we really don't want that. Oops. So put this one back to 600. There we go. Yeah, so this whole idea of where do we want that? So I'm just going to kind of zero it out. And, again, we can play with how much contrast, right? This kind of post-processing. And, color temperature, if we want it warmer, or we can go cooler. It's a bit warmer. And, cooler can be nice too. And that's, I think, a nice thing with the winter. So the same with this one. Maybe we don't want the warm glow. So I can quickly just change this color temperature and go a bit cooler. And it gives us, and this is that whole thing. I think color temperature with winter really helps. You can go cooler, and that really helps tell the story further with the winter scenes. Is that we're in a color mode. So again, here's really blue. Feels cold. Just watching this, I feel cold. And that's pretty cool. All right, so with that. And you can see this one's a bit warmer. So let's go again, this one with a bit of a cooler color temperature. So I'm just going here, and I'm just going to make it a bit cooler. That really helps tell the winter story. So just think about, there are those options. You don't have to go cooler, but I think, it can get into a really nice story if it looks a bit cooler. Yeah, definitely that's a nice way to go, a bit blue. And the last one is here like that. So you can see that real story of the cold blue, right? And now, again, let's look at it the opposite way. If I go, make it warmer, then I don't feel as cold. I feel like, this is almost kind of like the end of winter, like spring's on its way or something. So again, in our storytelling, what do we want to tell? Is this kind of the end of the winter? I would use something more like this, where it's warmer, or kind of how it was shot with a bit of warmth added. Again, a little bit warmer like this. now I don't feel as cold, right? You can already feel that kind of warmth from a bit of the warm of the sun and this. So just how you can quickly change the mood, going a bit bluer, going a bit warmer, and it's really up to you which way you want to go with that. So that's the really neat thing of how this works. And again, so what did we do? We clicked on over here, and then we go under image, and then we're able to go decode using clip. Let's zoom in here, decode using clip. I can change the ISO, I can change color temperature, I can change the exposure. So you can basically customize each clip in with Blackmagic Raw. And then I also did right-clicked here. I changed the clip speed, so 400%, 500, 400, 600, somewhere around there, 4, 5, 6 times faster, just to get it moving faster through. Because the clips were originally, this was the original clip over here. And you can see it's way longer to watch through, right? But again, that could be nice too. Maybe you want just a really subtle, like, you know, the clouds are slowly moving. So it's a time lapse, but it doesn't have to necessarily be really fast. I think that's the nice option of these too, that it can just be slow moving, but it's still a time lapse, but it's less noticeable of a time lapse where the clouds are just moving. But we just want to speed things up a little bit. And that's the whole thing. It's just, you know, it's capturing frames over the course of time to make things seem a bit faster and work in that way. So again, right back here, you know, how do we do that? Just a bit of a recap here. So again, going to the menu, and then I'm turning the time lapse on or off there, deciding how many seconds, 1 frame every second or 1 frame every 2 frames. You know, you're just kind of doubling up. So it can be a really subtle time lapse, or we can be doing 1 frame every 10 minutes. Again, that takes a long time. So you have to always consider the calculation time of, you know, how long, or how long do you need to record? So if you need a 2-minute time lapse, you can do the math and figure, okay, well, 2 minutes, if I'm shooting 1 frame every second, I'm getting 60 frames per minute, right? So 60 frames per minute, so that's 3 seconds per minute. And if I need, you know, and so on. So you do the math, and then you need, if you want 2 minutes, 3 seconds per minute. If you want 2 minutes, then you need to do 20 minutes, roughly. And that's the kind of thing. So you just need to, there's some really great online tools too that help us. And I always, once you're done, I would always turn that time lapse off again, so we're back into the regular mode. I think that's really important to remember, so that, you know, you don't try to keep recording or working in time lapse mode by accident. So yeah, so that's basically it. So just, you know, again, think about the, you know, what's required, and you know, what do you need? So always think about what's it for? You know, are you just trying time lapse out? Are you trying to, is it part of a film? Is it part of a certain story you want to tell? Do you want it to feel cool? Do you want it to feel a little bit warm? And then how much do you really need? And then going backwards. I would always shoot more frames, because like I showed you, you can speed it up, more frames, but I wouldn't shoot real time and then speed it up, because then you're using a lot of media. So you can fit, you saw 41 minutes or 790 minutes on the same card. So that's a real advantage of time lapse, of what you can fit on one 64 gig card. So yeah, that's it. Thanks again for joining us. My name's Tom Sternat. I'm the lead digital artist. Just want to, you know, remind everyone, in January we're gonna have some more workshops coming up in Blackmagic technology and Blackmagic Raw in 4K. So be sure to sign up for that. We'll have those up in the coming days on our website, tbmcs.ca. You can always send me an email, tom@tbmcs.ca, if you have any questions or comments. And again, want to thank all our partners in this project, Canada Council for the Arts, and we have our library partners where you can get the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. So that's at the Blue Mountains Public Library, and at the Wasaga Beach Public Library, and also our partner, Collywood Public Library. So thanks again. And once you've shot this, you can go to any of the libraries to use the iMac 27-inch editing systems that have Blackmagic Resolve Studio installed. You can do everything that I just showed you here. This will be available to rewatch, so feel free to review this and, you know, go over any of the concepts. And I hope you can try it out and have some fun with some winter time lapse. Until next time, have a great rest of the day. All the best.